Tonight, there's no stopping Canadian athletes, adding to the nation's Olympic medal haul. Podium performances, 3 bronze extends Canada's medal streak.
Wonderful, wonderful performance.
Plus, making history in a historic city, we speak with some fencing phenoms.
That was my first Olympics, so it was very, very special.
Growing concern in a BC community after a landslide triggers flooding fears.
It could be catastrophic on a number of different fronts.
Tech takes a tumble as the week ends with a major stock sell-off.
That's the roller coaster, and you're going to get those ups and downs.
Words of relief and frustration from the prisoners released by Russia.
Basically, everybody I sat with is a political prisoner, and nobody knows them publicly.
And an Atlantic oyster alert.
I have workers I can take care of and fishermen, so we're all nervous about it.
A devastating spread of a deadly parasite leaves a multi-million-dollar industry anxiously waiting.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. Canadian athletes are once again standing on the podium in Paris for another multi-medal day, adding 3 bronze to the nation's Olympic standings in swimming, tennis, and trampoline. Both rookies and veterans proving their strength on the world stage. CTV's Scott Hurst has the details.
Sofiane Méthode continues Canada's impressive run in trampoline.
I was just so happy with what I did, going out there, perform, right time, right moment. For me, that was the goal. That was just an achievement.
The 25-year-old winning a bronze medal, a massive accomplishment for a first-time Olympian.
It's her Olympic debut as well. It's just such an amazing journey for her, and it was so beautiful to watch.
Canadian women have medaled in trampoline in 6 of the last 7 Olympics, ever since its debut at the Sydney Games in 2000. On the clay court of Roland Garros, Canada's second-ever Olympic tennis medal today. Montreal's Felix Auger-Aliassime and Ottawa's Gabby Dabrowski winning their bronze medal match. Auger-Aliassime has one more swing at another medal tomorrow as he plays for bronze in the men's singles tournament. Team Canada continues to make waves in the pool with another podium finish. 28-year-old Kylie Moss winning bronze in the 200-meter backstroke. It is her 5th Olympic medal. As track and field gets underway, all eyes on the reigning Olympic champion in decathlon, Canadian Damian Warner. He finished the day in 4th place after 5 events.
This is not Damian's first Olympics. I think it's his 3rd one, and he's done very, very well in the past ones and in World Championships as well.
Warner is looking for his 3rd straight Olympic podium, gold in Tokyo, bronze in Rio. Hammer throw may not get a lot of attention, but Canada has 2 chances to podium. Reigning world champion Ethan Katzberg qualifying first in his group, and he'll be joined in the finals, which take place on Sunday, by countryman Rowan Hamilton. The Canadian men's basketball team is now 3-0 after knocking off powerhouse Spain. It means the squad brimming with NBA talent will win their group and move on to the quarterfinals undefeated. Canada's medal count now stands at 11, and if we look ahead to tomorrow, our women's soccer team will play its quarterfinal match against Germany. Against all odds, the women continue their exciting run at Paris 2024, Heather.
Thank you, Scott. Canada's appeal to be awarded a team figure skating bronze medal from the Beijing Olympics has been rejected by the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Russia skated to gold at the event, but that was later dropped to bronze after Russian skater Kamila Valieva was found guilty of doping earlier in the season. Her disqualification removed 10 points from the Russian team, leaving them just ahead of the Canadians. Canada appealed that decision, saying it should have been given the points. There is shock and sadness in a community in southwestern Ontario tonight. 2 people are dead, 2 others critically injured following a shooting in Stratford. The motivation, police believe, was an ongoing neighbor dispute. CTV's Ashley Bacon has the details.
Multiple police cruisers on a quiet Stratford street after neighbors say they were woken up by the sound of gunfire.
We thought okay, these are gunshots, and I think we heard 5 or 6 of them. And there was a lot of screaming, and within 2 or 3 minutes there were 6 or 8 police cars out there, and we saw a lady with a bleeding arm. They took her to the ambulance.
I woke up to banging sounds, there was small ones, and then a explosion sounded and because I thought it was a transformer that blew up. And then there were smaller pops after that.
Some of them rushing to safety after what they saw and heard.
I saw the neighbors here taking cover, and just responding to the situation. I told my family to go in the back rooms.
It appears that all parties did know one another. We've been receiving reports of ongoing neighbor disputes.
They say a man shot 3 people before turning the gun on himself. They identified the shooter as 31-year-old Ricky Bilkey and the victim who died as 36-year-old Jonathan Bennett. Police also identifying the 2 victims who were wounded, who were airlifted to hospital, as a 43-year-old man who has life-threatening injuries and a woman who was shot as she left her home.
There were other gunshots that went astray and struck a number of residences in other areas around the neighborhood.
Neighbors tell CTV News that a group of people were gathering at a home on the street before the shots rang out.
We don't know what happened. They were just like everybody else, they were in their yards and drinking beer, and it's normal stuff.
The shooting leaving a community on edge.
I'm feeling very anxious, and I'm a little nerve-wracked.
We all were quite shaken because this is a very quiet street.
At this stage, there is no update as to the condition of the 2 people who remain in hospital. They were flown to that London-based hospital yesterday evening after the incident. Of course, police say the investigation is still ongoing, but there is no current threat to public safety. Ashley Bacon, CTV News, Stratford.
People in BC's interior are bracing for flooding after a landslide blocked the Chilcotin River. The lake building behind the dam appears to have doubled in size in just days. Provincial projections suggest it's more likely the water will flow over top than burst altogether. Still, officials are taking every measure to prepare for the worst. CTV's Heather Wright explains.
The landslide is massive, stretching roughly 30 meters high and 600 meters long, about the length of 6 football fields.
The sheer magnitude of that landslide is pretty breathtaking.
The chief of the Williams Lake First Nation is among those who live in the area, who are closely watching what happens as officials predict the dam could burst in the next 24 to 48 hours.
If the entire flood releases and all that water comes crashing down that valley and down that river and into the Fraser, it could be catastrophic.
Flood warnings and watches have been issued for the area, with about a dozen people already evacuated from their homes. The landslide is located near Farwell Canyon, roughly 285 kilometers north of Vancouver, with the concern, of course, being that if the dam breaks, millions of cubic meters of water will rush south along the Chilcotin to the Fraser River and all the way down to Hope. The province is working with engineers to see if it's possible to slowly release the water before the dam breaks.
17 million cubic meters of water have built up on one side of that slide, and it continues to increase by the minute.
Along the banks of the Chilcotin, the impacts of extreme weather, including forest fires, are visible. But experts say climate change is not the only culprit. They say logging has taken away nature's best defense against landslides.
When you remove the forest and the forests are not there to actually relieve the soil water from the pressure, that's when the soil cave in, and it has been caving in since the late 90s.
Officials say it is still possible the water tops the dam and moves downstream more as a trickle, but at this point they are preparing for the worst and have recovery plans in motion in the event of flash flooding. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
Forest fires remain a major threat to BC. 8 of the roughly 320 burning across the province have been deemed wildfires of note. The Dunn Creek and Sitcombe Creek fires have been added to the list of fires that are either highly visible or pose a threat to public safety and infrastructure. Firefighting personnel and heavy equipment crews are on the ground at both sites. Bus tours are being organized for people forced from their homes by the raging wildfire that tore through Jasper National Park.
While we understand all Jasperites are eager to see their community, we are prioritizing tours for folks who have been the most impacted.
The Jasper fire forced thousands of people to flee the park and town site before eventually spreading into the community and destroying 1/3 of its buildings. Officials say they will stagger the bus tours to ensure safety. A rough day on the markets with triple-digit losses on both sides of the border. It appeared to be a reaction to both weak job numbers in the United States and some struggling tech stocks. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver on the financial fallout here and in the U.S.
For the second day in a row, global markets tumbled, with investors on Wall Street and Bay Street selling stocks over fears the U.S. economy is slowing.
It's, an understandable pullback. We just had a terrible jobs number, one of the worst jobs numbers we've seen in a long time.
New data shows fewer U.S. jobs than expected were created last month, when unemployment also ticked up to 4.3%. That spooked investors, leading to the Dow closing down 1.51%. The TSX Composite Index down 2.18%, and the NASDAQ closing down 2.43%.
5 to 10% corrections are actually very normal and healthy. The market has been almost going straight up, and it's time to take a pause and digest all the information and see what the data comes in.
The area hit hardest in the sell-off, the tech sector, with stocks including Amazon and Tesla down more than 20% from recent highs.
High flyer. And I think there's a concern that maybe that just got a bit overdone. So it's not just the slowing economy. It's perhaps a second guessing of how much exuberance there was.
While some economists fear a U.S. recession may be near, in part because the Federal Reserve has been slow to cut interest rates, U.S. officials today disagreed, saying the economy is doing well.
When you look at the overall trends, yes, it's still a very strong economy that has defied all expectation in terms of its recovery and now in terms of its level of sustained, steady growth.
So what advice do economists have for Canadians worried about their portfolios?
That's the roller coaster. That's the nature of investing in something that's uncertain. You're going to get those ups and downs. Right now, it's just a down period, but ride it out, and there's money to be had on the other side.
With signs the U.S. economy may be loosening faster than expected, many economists now anticipate, Heather, that the Bank of Canada will make 3 more interest rate cuts this year.
All right, Annie, thanks. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris has secured enough votes to become the Democrats' presidential nominee.
We are going to win this election, and it is going to take all of us.
Harris thanking her campaign team today. Party delegates are still voting virtually until Monday, but today Harris already passed the majority threshold to clinch the nomination. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has revoked a plea agreement for 3 men accused of plotting the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Alleged mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and 2 accused accomplices have been reinstated as death penalty cases. Austin overruled the overseer of the war court at Guantanamo Bay, canceling the plea agreement reached earlier this week. Some emotional scenes at a U.S. Air Force base as 3 Americans freed by Russia in a prisoner swap were welcomed home. The multinational deal set 24 people free. CTV's Mike LeCouture on the joyful reunion with their families.
A reunion 17 months in the making. Alsu Kermasheva holds her family tight after landing safe in the U.S. It was a night of relief and jubilation for the freed hostages, like Canadian U.S. citizen Paul Whelan.
That's when it became real. We flew over Ireland, then Canada, and into America, and then I knew I was home.
While thankful for his freedom, journalist Evan Gershkovich's thoughts were with those left behind.
Basically everybody I sat with is a political prisoner, and nobody knows them publicly.
And one of them is American teacher Mark Fogel, who was detained at a Moscow airport for possession of medical marijuana, much like WNBA star Brittany Griner. But his family claims Mark's lack of notoriety has slowed his case.
It's been one of the most frustrating times of my life.
The U.S. government says Fogel is a priority.
We're not giving up. We're not giving up on that.
The Russians just weren't willing
to throw him into the mix, and we tried many different times. I mean, from a very, very early stage here, when we knew we had to work on a new deal, we included Mr. Fogel.
Friday, the Kremlin admitted one of the prisoners freed by Germany in the historic exchange is a Russian state assassin. And some worry that such a significant prisoner swap will only encourage so-called hostage diplomacy.
A person like Putin, you can bet that if he has the opportunity to arrest people in the future, he will do so again if he wants to get people back in exchange.
In a statement, Global Affairs Canada told CTV News our country remains deeply committed to putting an end to the use of people as bargaining chips in diplomatic relations. Heather?
Michael Couture in Ottawa. Canadians in Lebanon are being told to get out now and not to rely on government evacuation flights if war engulfs the Middle Eastern nation. The warning comes as hundreds of people held a symbolic funeral for a slain Hamas leader in Beirut. Ismail Haniyeh was killed Wednesday in Iran. The assassinations of Haniyeh and other Hamas and Hezbollah leaders has triggered fears of a regional war. Pressure is mounting on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro after the United States recognized an opposition candidate as the victor of the country's recent presidential election. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken issued a statement saying there is overwhelming evidence opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez won the election. The U.S. announcement comes as multiple governments call on Venezuelan officials to release the full voting results. Coming up, PEI's oysters in hot water.
Our industry's pretty much done.
The tiny parasite threatening an industry. Plus, is Canada becoming a fencing powerhouse? A little parasite is posing a big threat to PEI's world-renowned oysters. It can kill oysters and has been detected at several spots across the island. What previously devastated industries in Virginia and Cape Breton is threatening to do the same on PEI. CTV's Sarah Plowman takes a look at what fishers can learn from others.
Life on the water is usually paradise for oyster fishers and suppliers. Now hit by a wave of worry because of a newly found parasite, MSX. They can't see it, but feel its impact.
A lot of unsleepless nights, stress, not knowing what can you do with your oyster. We want to move them, and there's a lot of regulations.
The deadly parasite won't hurt people, but could hurt their catch. It's been confirmed in 4 spots on PEI. In the late 50s, MSX devastated the industry in Virginia. In the early 2000s, it did the same to Cape Breton. This PEI wild oyster fisherman worries Bedeck Bay, where the parasite was first found, will be closed.
If that shuts down next year and they don't give us any more rivers, our industry's pretty much done.
Virginia's oyster industry did bounce back. Some oysters naturally became disease resistant. Researchers don't recommend PEI wait for that.
That could be a decade, it could be more than that, because oyster generations are 2 or 3 years.
The right formula, he believes, is to not harvest all wild oysters, but let some evolve. With aquaculture, he suggests using disease-resistant seed to breed.
I mean, that's where we are in the U.S. with regard to beating these diseases, and that's, I think, where PEI needs to try to get to.
Those determined to stay afloat are open to hearing options.
And that's all you got to do is work together to keep it going.
PEI oysters are still perfectly safe to eat. They're still being bought and sold, but people need a special permit to remove them from anywhere where this parasite has been detected. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Summerside.
Still ahead, farm field adventures. The donkeys doing very important work in New Brunswick. You've likely heard of guard dogs, but have you heard of guard donkeys? This New Brunswick farmer decided on donkeys to help fend off predators. 20 donkeys to protect her baby calves from coyotes. The animal has become popular with people who need to protect livestock.
If they lose a calf, I mean, they're losing $2,000 a year. That's one calf. A donkey's job is to guard the cows. I have donkeys who, as soon as I have a new calf, they will not leave the pasture because they know it's their job to protect them.
She hasn't lost a single calf since she started putting donkeys on guard a few years ago. From farm fields to Olympic fan favorites. Team Canada's first ever Fan Fest kicked off today in Toronto, where people put their skills to the test with events like balance beam or basketball, and had the chance to meet former Olympians.
It makes my career so much more meaningful to connect with the next generation of young kids, next generation of Olympians.
The event heads to Montreal next week. After the break, the Canadian fencers on guard.
I was overcome with emotions.
Sharing Olympic dreams with our Jean-Pierre Boschman in Paris. We leave you tonight with a combat sport that demands strategy, speed, and skill. Fencing is among the few sports included at every edition of the modern Olympics. CTV's Jean-Pierre Boschman walked the streets of Paris with a pair of Canadians showing their strength at these games.
Where was your first junior world?
Azerbaijan.
Ah, okay.
In a Paris cafe, Eleanor Harvey and Faraz Arfa share stories of their winning moments in Paris that impressed the fencing world and wowed fans.
When I walked in, I was overcome with emotions, even though I hadn't even competed yet. But
it's within the walls of the Grand Palais, a time capsule of French culture of sorts built in 1900, that Canadians stood on guard and broke through Europe's long-guarded barrier around the classic sport of fencing. Arfa downed a Hungarian champion who was chasing his fourth consecutive gold medal, a major Olympic upset.
The French crowds are amazing. They're loud, they cheer. They're obnoxious at times because you can't hear anything anymore.
Remarkable for fencers not used to crowds packing venues to watch their sport on Canadian soil.
How did it measure up to your dream of little Eleanor at 7?
I've been reflecting a lot on that. I've been thinking a lot about the journey.
For this, her third Olympics, Eleanor Harvey took bronze and came within a touch of a second medal in the team event.
You know, I know I'm going to keep fencing. I'm going to have downs and ups. That's going to come back. I'm going to feel like I suck again. Like that will happen. You know, nothing can take this away. So right now I'm enjoying that.
The fencers have had little funding for years and are proud they managed to fight off what were considered stronger opponents.
I think it's really invigorating to know that we stayed in Canada, trained with each other, and that was enough for our results.
But now they hope this success will bring more money to the sport and more future fencers.
It helps people maybe give it a shot. Why not try fencing instead of hockey?
They'll both stay here for a bit longer to play tourist, to savor the history here where their sport is considered mighty. Heather.
A great way to wrap up their experience, Jen, thanks. That's our newscast. I'm Heather Butts. Thank you for watching. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.